Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Ushanka Show. Stories about life in the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. Today's story was made possible by one of my subscribers, Sean from Florida, who was very kind to send me this brochure called Perestroika, Soviet Scientists Speak. Thank you, Sean, so much. That was an awesome present. This brochure was published by Novosti, which means News Press Agency Publishing House in 1989, so 2 years before the collapse of the Soviet Union. Perestroika phenomena is quite an interesting topic to discuss, and I know it makes a lot of people extremely angry, and especially the people who like to hang out on Reddit. And before we start going through the pages of this brochure, I would like to read you this statement, which I think is extremely important. Perestroika's goal is to fully restore the Leninist concept of socialism as a system of humanism in action, serving the interest of man and creating beneficial conditions for the flourishing of his creative skills, prosperity, health, and for his physical and spiritual development. And another important quote. We want to be understood, stressed Mikhail Gorbachev, addressing foreign readers in his book Perestroika, New Thinking for Our Country and the World. We are conducting all our reforms in accordance with the socialist choice. We are looking within socialism rather than outside of it for the answers to all the questions that arise. So as you see, the original concept of perestroika was not to destroy Soviet Union and destroy the socialist system. It was actually to restore the Leninist concept of socialism. I'm just quoting this brochure. Okay, so let's start with analyzing the word perestroika. It consists of two elements. Pere, which means rare, and stroika means construction. Perestroika, reconstruction. Well, what's interesting about this word perestroika, it wasn't really used in Russian language before Gorbachev introduced it in 1986, I believe. So everyone understood what it means, but it wasn't used every day like, hey, we're doing perestroika, like when we do some kind of reconstruction of the building or whatever. And whoever come up with this term, with this word perestroika, is a real genius. You see, the word stroika, it does mean construction, but it's more like a casual word, not a street word, but it's casual, stroika. A real proper word for construction is actually строительство. Строительство. Can you imagine, instead of perestroika, we will try to say перестроительство. Да здравствует перестроительство. It sounds so stupid. But anyway, let's explore what the Soviet scientists have to say about perestroika and the need of changes in a Soviet society. We will start with Guri Marchuk, who back in 1988 was the president of the USSR Academy of Sciences. Guri Ivanovich Marchuk, I must say, Guri is not a Russian name. It's really unusual. Born 1925, died in 2013. So he was a Soviet and later Russian scientist in the fields of computational mathematics and physics of atmosphere. And he got a lot of prizes, including the USSR State Prize in 1979, Demidov Prize in 2004, and Lomonosov Gold Medal 2004. So it appears that Comrade Marchuk lived happily ever after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, but back in 1988 he said the following. Perestroika in science is an integral part and to a great extent the very foundation of the revolutionary reforms currently underway in the Soviet Union. Optimizing the development of fundamental science is the essence of perestroika within the academic system. Our next scientist is Boris Paton from Ukraine. Scientific and technological progress is the main tool of implementing the innovative strategy of acceleration. So ускорение was acceleration. There was perestroika, ускорение и гласность. Reconstruction, acceleration, and freedom of speech. Advanced by the party, writes President of Ukrainian Academy of Sciences Boris Paton. Soviet scientists are being faced with extremely complicated and responsible tasks affecting breakthroughs in the near future in the principal fields of knowledge and ensuring an extensive restructuring of national economy through the achievements of science and technology. Oh my goodness. Boris Evgenievich Paton was Soviet and later Ukrainian scientist and long-time chairman of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. He was born in 1918 and he passed away in 2020 at the age of 101. That's very impressive. So it looks like we're going to have a Letters of the Dead Man story here, because all those scientists that participated in this brochure Perestroika back in 1988, they're all dead now. Boris Paton, as well as his father Evgeny Paton, were famous for their works in electric welding. His father founded a Paton Institute of Electric Welding in Kiev, and they have a bridge, the first welded bridge in Kiev, which is named Paton Bridge, and he educated from Kiev Polytechnical Institute, just like I did. And here's another interesting statement by Guri Marchuk, and I see it as the complaint or maybe a statement about inefficiency of central planning. He said, "Today the rate of progress is impeded not by a lack of promising ideas or developments, but by their slow introduction into mass production." Well, whom are you going to blame for slow introduction? Central planning. If you may recall, Mikhail Gorbachev, after becoming a leader of the Soviet Union, began his reforms not with perestroika, but with so-called anti-alcohol campaign, anti-alkoholная кампания. And this is what academic Abel Aganbegyan said about that. In 1986, the Soviet people's lifespan increased noticeably. Thanks to extremely serious measures to combat alcoholism, we have broken these negative tendencies. So once again, confirmation that Soviet people, mostly men, were drinking way too much. This has saved the lives of tens of thousands of people, mainly men of active age. We have begun to devote more attention to child care and maternity and extended privileges for mothers with young children, making it possible to stabilize and even decrease child mortality. Okay, so Abel Aganbegyan looks like he's still alive. Good for him. He's 92 years old now. He was born in October of 1932 in Tbilisi, Georgia. So Armenian guy, born in Georgia, and he was Soviet and Russian economist of Armenian descent, full member of Russian Academy of Sciences, and honorary doctor of business administration of Kingston University. So Abel was a son of senior Communist Party of Soviet Union official, graduated from Moscow State Economical Institute in 1956, and he was employed by a Soviet government structure responsible for salary policy in the USSR. In 1961, he left official work and started scientific career. And here's the interesting part. In the late 1980s, he became one of Mikhail Gorbachev's chief economic advisors and among the first Soviet economists to voice the need for a restructuring of the economic and business infrastructure of the Soviet Union. His ideas were presented in a number of ideological books on perestroika. I wonder if he wrote any books after the collapse of Soviet Union and explain why his economic and business infrastructure restructuring failed. And here's another professor talking about anti-drinking campaign. The changes are promising, said Professor Igor Bestuzhev-Lada. The number of deaths caused by heart diseases has gone down noticeably. The number of misfortunes resulting from the same causes, such as industrial and traffic accidents, and the crimes committed in a state of drunkenness, has also decreased. In the past 12 to 18 months, we have achieved such results as we had not previously achieved over many years. What are the preconditions for this stride forward? Glasnost is a fairly essential one. That's interesting. Enlightening and publicity have brought about psychological improvement. Society's attitude to its ailment has changed radically. Very interesting. Interesting. There's only Russian language Wikipedia article on Igor Bestuzhev-Lada. But anyway, he was born in 1927, passed away in 2015. He was Soviet and Russian historian, and he was futurolog. So he was working on the science of predicting the future. It's kind of interesting. When he started writing his first works on the science of futurologia, he took a pen name Lada because he was afraid people may give him hard time and he may lose his job. And then later he started published under double name Bestuzhev-Lada. And for a long time, he actually worked as a professor, and he had lectures «Основы научного коммунизма». So he was teaching students the basics of scientific communism. Interesting. Okay, I got curious, so I had to look it up. Futurology, or future studies, is a systematic study of social and technological advancement as well as other environmental trends. Futurologists use scientific methods to predict future trends based on current trends and scientific advances. Futurology is social science with speculative and descriptive aspects that can be traced to the science fiction and utopian literature. Really interesting that he was writing that in the Soviet Union and he didn't get in trouble. And here's the interesting statement by Professor of Department of Economics of the Moscow University, Vitaly Zhamin. He said, "It costs the country a lot to give free education to all, but we have to ensure that it reaps the greatest benefit, both social and economic. By the way, you can see for yourself, spendings on education in the final count turn out to be a considerable contribution to the national income and therefore among the most profitable." Vitaly Zhamin was born in 1920 and he died on September 21st, 1989, so the same year this brochure was published at the age of 69, quite early. And he was a professor and he spent a lot of time doing lectures on economical development of socialist countries. And another quote about importance of education from Vice President of the USSR Academy of Sciences, Evgeny Velikhov. "Today it's clear that Perestroika, which has embraced all aspects of life in the social sector, is not only a creative process but above all a process of study. And therefore education is a kind of spiritual guarantee of our advancement." So, Evgeny Velikhov, born in 1935, and he's still alive, age 89. He's a physicist and scientific leader in the Russian Federation. He's the author of over 1,500 scientific publications and a number of inventions and discoveries. In 1968, he obtained the rank of Professor of Atomic Physics, Plasma Physics, and Microelectronics, so it looks like he was heavily involved in atomic bomb, looks like it. He worked at Kurchatov Institute. In 1986, he was also a science advisor of Mikhail Gorbachev, and he helped in a cleanup aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster. Found another interesting quote about Soviet education done by member of the USSR Academy of Sciences, Gennady Yagodin, and he said, "But time has passed and it has become evident that we had big ideas about education without having proper material resources, efficient methods of education, or sufficiently trained teachers. When secondary education, that's what we call it, basically high school education, was made compulsory, all pupils, even those who did not want to study and were incapable of doing so, were being dragged to school leaving certificates, to their diploma." Okay, so Gennady Prigozhin, born in 1927, died in 2015, age of 87. He did attempt to kind of do some changes at the Soviet education back in 1988. One of his controversial orders, number 540, from the summer of 1988, allowed children to go from 9th grade to the 10th grade, even if they failed a class or two, and even to get a diploma and finish high school, even if you failed a couple of subjects. So that was a big deal. And another change he did, he restored so-called отсрочка for the college students. So it was a moment when if you get into college and that college doesn't have a military department, I talked about it in my videos about college education in Soviet Union, students could finish college and then go being drafted to army. At some point it was canceled. So he forced to restore отсрочка. So he said it's really bad for the student to take a 2-year military break and then go back to college. It just kind of affects college education in a negative way. Next several pages of this brochure dedicated to environment, and that's pretty much an interesting statement. It says that generally, socialist countries show more consideration for nature on the whole than the capitalist countries. This is confirmed by the Western specialists, probably like Tucker Carlson, who have made a comparative analysis of ecological situation throughout the world. The streets, soil, and water are cleaner in Moscow than in big Western cities. Of course, back then there was hardly any cars on the streets of Moscow, so definitely that's correct statement right there. And then I stumbled upon the quote of late academician Valery Legasov. If you watched the show HBO Chernobyl, you should recognize the name. So he died in 1988, says right here, right in brochure, and he was a former first deputy director of the Kurchatov Institute of Nuclear Energy. And Valery Legasov said, such accidents, he talks about Chernobyl, are not limited to nuclear power industry. Let us remember the fate of Challenger or other spacecraft, plane and train crashes, and shipwrecks. The source of evil is not nuclear or other technologies as such, but their incorrect and incompetent handling. This should be avoided by taking necessary measurements and safeguarded against by all sorts of precautions. In the section about employment, I stumbled upon this interesting, I would say dangerous statement by academician Tatiana Zaslavskaya. She said, as scientific and technological progress accelerates, an excessive labor force is likely to be relieved from production. Today, Soviet scientists believe that 5 to 15% of employed labor force is unnecessary and kept on just in case. The demand for labor is generally greater than the supply, but under new conditions the situation may change. The need will arise for a balanced redistribution of labor among the industries and territories. So, you see, in 1988, Soviet scientists estimated that between 5 to 15% of employed labor force shouldn't be employed. They just kept them and paid them just to be there, just in case. It's kind of cute to see this careful admitting of problems in the Soviet Union. For example, the statement that the supplies of goods and services in the Soviet Union leave much to be desired. Recently, however, the range and quality of goods and services has begun to improve. Or this one, during the 11th five-year plan period from 1981 till 1985, the amount of money in circulation tripled. Meanwhile, consumer goods production only doubled. This imbalance still exists even though in recent years the situation has changed much for the better. In a normal society, if they triple the money, double the goods, goods will become more expensive. In Soviet Union, where all the prices are fixed, those goods just gonna disappear from the shelves. And still, there's a plenty of Soviet-era bravado, like this statement from academician Anatoly Alexandrov. Can our country manage without scientific and technological cooperation with the United States? Of course it can. Suffice it to name the most sophisticated fields of modern science and technology. The Soviet Union has developed nuclear, stole nuclear and laser technologies without any assistance from the United States or other country. Well, that's true, there was no assistance. When you steal technology, you don't get assistance, you just get technology. It has a high scientific and economic potential, and owing to its social structure, it can concentrate enormous forces and means in the desired areas. But beyond any doubt, exchanges in science and technology and further development of world trade would promote the acceleration of scientific and technological progress all over the world. Okay, so Anatoly Petrovich Alexandrov, born 1903, died in 1994, was a Soviet physicist who played a crucial and centralizing role in the former Soviet program of nuclear weapons. Comrade Alexandrov, you probably could tell us so many interesting stories about development of nuclear weapons in the Soviet Union. But yeah, he got Stalin Prize, Lenin Prize. He became a hero of social labor 3 times. So this dude got a lot of awards for his success in creating nuclear bomb. And it looks like Anatoly Alexandrov was the father of Soviet-era nuclear fleet. Nuclear icebreakers were built under his supervision, as well as nuclear submarines. Okay, so that was a short review of the Perestroika brochure, Soviet Citizens Speak. I hope you guys find it interesting, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.